Welcome to a special Halloween episode of Haunted Talks, the official podcast of The Haunted Walk, offering ghost tours and paranormal adventures in Kingston, Ottawa, and Toronto, Ontario. My name is Jim Dean. I'm the creative director, and a very happy Halloween to you and yours. What are ghosts? What do they look like? How do they act? Why do they exist? These are fundamental questions we explore in virtually every episode of Haunted Talks. As we approach Halloween, when the boundaries between the living and the dead, and the past, present, and future are most blurred, it seems only fitting that we look at these questions once again from a slightly different perspective. In 1900, an article was first published in the Chicago Tribune, headlined with "The Habits and Customs of Ghosts, Investigated by Science." It shares some truly terrifying ghost stories and provides insight into how people thought about ghosts and hauntings 120 years ago, and the similarities to the hauntings of today. But before we get to that, we would love to be part of your plans for the big Halloween weekend. On Halloween, we will be running 2 special virtual haunted campfires. At 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time will be Terrible Tales for Creepy Kids, our family-friendly event for those younger paranormal enthusiasts and ghost story lovers. At 11:30 p.m. Eastern Time, you can join me around the virtual haunted campfire for a collection of ghost stories that can only be told around midnight, which, as you know, are my very favorite stories to share. Our other virtual product you can take part in anywhere in the world, from the comfort of your own home, is our Haunting at Home, a guided audio experience by yours truly, where we lead you through a series of experiments with the paranormal. Not only is this an amazingly fun and spooky activity to take part in around Halloween, but we're also collecting reports and trying to determine how many of us may live in haunted homes. I would like as many of you as possible to participate in this. The more data we have, the better. And I know it is the kind of eerie adventure you will most certainly enjoy. You can get 20% off the Haunting at Home by using the promo code HauntedTalks at checkout. For more information and to participate in one of our virtual experiences, please visit our website, hauntedwalk.com, or check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all 3 at Haunted Walk. Habits and Customs of Ghosts, Investigated by Science. Chicago Tribune, July 22nd, 1900. Hundreds of ghosts being annually brought to light in the dragnets of scientific spook catchers conform to no general rules as to appearance or behavior. Ghostland must, in truth, be a realm of spicy variety and absolute independence. A well-known psychic researcher has lately permitted access to his voluminous records of 1,000 or more of the most vivid phantoms experienced here and abroad within the past 10 years. Gray, rather than black or white, appears to be the prevailing color worn by these latter-day ghosts. 2 houses, one in England and the other in Ireland, are persistently haunted by what are called Grey Ladies. The Irish spook of this category recently stood in front of a bust of Shakespeare, hidden by her form. A pair of shoes, thrown at her opaque substance, passed through it completely and crashed against the marble bust. A third grey ghost, haunting the ancient dormitory of an English college, is on the other hand transparent. The panels of windows can be seen through its form. A fourth gray ghost appears as a shadow, singularly distinct and showing all the lines and features of a human being. In fact, there are too many gray ghosts for enumeration. The quote-unquote sheeted dead appear to be in a small minority nowadays. Even black ghosts seem to outnumber them. The black shade of an ancient clergyman, often seen in daylight upon an English country road, sometimes wears a white film of vapor. The phantom of another clergyman, seen in the church, is described as a black, clear mist with an outline of a man. That of a little old woman in brown has long haunted the front yard of a certain cottage, while that of an old lady in green bothers a minister of the gospel. Many ghosts are luminous. One is especially so when the moonlight shines on it. Blue lights have often been seen after dark along the country haunts of a daylight ghost of black hue. Blue light surrounded also the ghost of a dead parent who came to inform his daughter that she had lost a favorite aunt. The spook of a dead friend appearing to another woman illuminated her apartment at night until it was as bright as day. Modern specters differ quite as widely as their substance. Many are vaporous and intangible. Others can be distinctly felt. Some are so heavy that they weigh their victims down. Others as so flimsy that objects can pass through them. That of an old woman is of a semi-transparent, ethereal nature, passed in a narrow passage without being felt as it brushes by. A woman who saw the spook of a man sitting in a chair attempted to sit on its lap, but she went completely through. The specter of a friend haunting a gentleman while the latter was driving home along his gig caused a dark shadow to envelop him as it bent over him one evening. Then again, there are some phantoms which take forms other than human. A misty pillar frequents a lane in one locality. Fishermen in another place, looking for the body of a drowned companion, saw in the woods nearby a sort of cloud. A voice came from it directing him to the spot where they afterward found the corpse. Another ghost, taking the shape of a bright ball of light, palish blue, was seen by a woman as she entered her bedroom in the darkness. Hanging between her and the ceiling, it emitted no rays. The remainder of the room was dark. As she left the room, it remained, but when she returned, it had gone. Haunted people experience various sensations while touching ghosts. The rough clothing of an invisible spook is felt to brush against the skin of one young woman. Another specter had an icy hand that grasped a terrified woman. One woman, going upstairs at night, saw a tall man directly in front of her. Recognizing him as a dear friend, she reached out to touch him, but her hand simply felt space. Later, she received word from India that this friend had died on the date of her experience. Another woman, who seized a ghost in her room, says it felt soft, like flimsy drapery, and seemed to be dragged from her by some invisible power as it sank into the floor beside her bed. One ghost is accompanied by a wave of cold air, which chills those who draw near. Another is apparently warm. On hot nights, he is seen to mop his face with a handkerchief. A ghost that laid down by a friend in bed placed its frozen lips against her cheek. That some phantoms have appreciable weight is perhaps indicated by the case of a certain woman visited by the spirits of two dead friends. They appeared behind her while she was seated at her tea table and leaning upon her shoulders, rendering her immovable. She was unaware of what had happened until her daughter across the table cried out and gave names to the intruders. The majority of ghosts simply vanish, like breath into the wind. Others make their exits through bolted doors, slamming them loudly as they go. Many of these doors are seen to open, but later prove to be securely locked on the inside. Numerous spooks have the habit of vanishing as soon as they are spoken to. One which haunts a lonely road fades away in broad daylight, and in the presence of several witnesses closing in upon it from in front and from behind. A number of ghosts make their retreat through the floor. One phantom walked up to a man's door and disappeared through it, yet the door was shut and locked. The man and his wife, thinking the thing was a visitor, followed close behind. Other specters disappear through solid walls, passing through them as though they were atmosphere. Others, pursued in the open, retreat to fences or hedges and then fade from view. The spirit of an old man, customarily seen in an armchair of one haunted house, invariably rises from his seat and vanishes into the air as soon as the door to the chamber is opened. Ghosts differ quite as widely in facial expression as in other characteristics. One always has a long, clean-shaven face, and a pitiful expression. Another cleanly shaven spirit wears his hair high on his head and has a generally distinguished and gentle air. One of the witnesses of a woman ghost, though frightened by its first appearance, afterwards looked forward in the hope of seeing the kindly face again. In another haunting, its eyes were green and glistening, but the rest of its face was muffled up. A tall black ghost, frequently seen on rural roads, paralyzed some children with fright when they looked up and beheld the awful expression of its countenance. Women who saw its face at other times describe it as thin and deadly pale. The face of a young man's ghost haunting a modern city house is pale and luminous. His eyes are downcast, as though deep in thought. The majority of ghosts appear to look sad and deathly pale. A number among the masculine persuasion are clean-shaven, yet many are adorned with mustaches and beards worn in real life. To those who were near to them in life, they usually appear in their normal form. Sometimes, to those who may not have seen them for long intervals, they exhibit changes experienced before death, but not previously observed. A little 13-year-old girl, for instance, went into the dining room to get some cakes. Suddenly, the household was startled by her screams. She insisted that she had seen poor Papa sitting in his armchair and that he had put out his arms for his baby to kiss him. But the baby wouldn't, she said, because he looked so funny. He had black whiskers. The child's father was utterly unknown to her, dying at that moment in a distant place. Since leaving home, he had, unknown to her, grown a dark beard. Few, if any, of the phantoms now being ferreted out by the professional ghost hunters of such uncanny game appear to squeak and gibber like those of ancient Rome. A great majority of those actually seen are silent, so far as conversation is concerned. Many are unscrupulous to the noise which they make in moving about. Some make their presence known by rustling around. The footfalls of others are loud and so heavy that it makes houses and nerves tremble. An outdoor ghost announces his presence to persons wandering about in the country by producing an uncanny thud or thump on the ground beside them. A majority of the ghosts with audible voices appear to have invisible forms. A conspicuous number of the phantoms simply glide in locomotion. Some move thus over the ground or floor, others through space. Some have peculiar tread, unlike that of human beings. One walks on a bare, polished floor without making a sound. Another sounds like a huge bird while it flies through a haunted room. The ghost of Gordon Highlander, at the hour of his death, glided through the room of his friend, about a foot from the floor, and floated out the window. Fashion in dress appears to cut no figure in Spookland. The majority of late arrivals adhered to styles prevalent at their time of death. A grandmother's ghost appears in her customary gown of black silk and holds up her skirts while going up and down stairs. A phantom priest haunting the English estate of Lady Stafford appears in robes and a red sash. A ghost which peers and occasionally enters through the window opening in a churchyard wears a ruffled shirt front and knee breeches. Another dons tattered clothing from head to toe and looks like a scarecrow. It haunts the room occupied by a man who committed suicide by jumping from his window and tore his clothing to shreds while meeting his death. A phantom visitor of a pharmacist and his brother, who room together, habitually parades in its nightshirt. One seen by a lady dwelling in another place wore a long gray dressing gown with a long pointed collar which exposed a finely formed throat. A stiff skirt, rustling when she moves, is always worn by a well-known ghost haunting an ancient attic. A spirit in knee breeches and otherwise old-fashioned costume was discovered in Charles Lamb's old cottage, Edmonton, by Mrs. Thompson, its present occupant. Later, while studying a portrait of the great writer, she identified the spirit as his. An old lady haunting a farmhouse adheres to her white cap, white handkerchief, and white apron. A ghost in a drab coat frequented this same house. Some years afterward, it was learned that a former owner was an ancient Quaker who wore such apparel. Several officers of British cavalry, seated at a table in the barracks at Aldershot, saw the ghost of a young woman in a soiled bridal dress gliding slowly past the window in front of them. The window was 20 feet off the ground. The ghost's face was later identified by the photograph of an unknown woman, found in the room of a veterinary surgeon who was dying at the moment of this haunting in another part of the building. One feminine ghost dresses like a nun, but in gray. Another is seen in a pallid shawl and a gray-black bonnet. The conduct of the average ghost would appear from these records not to be saintly or dignified. One, haunting a hotel in Tyrol, pesters guests by tugging at their pajamas and thrusting its hand beneath their bodies. A university student, haunted by an annoying specter, says that it holds out its hands as if begging for something. Dublin Ghosts were discovered to visit a billiard room belonging to a private house to enjoy a game, frequently in the middle of the night, wherein the room would suddenly appear lighted. Though heard only through the door of the apartment, the game suddenly ended and the darkness returned when the door was opened. The same billiard balls were frequently heard rolling and clicking in daylight when this room, on the upper floors of the building, were closed. In another case, a ghost with the power to multiply and appear in the same place and at the same time as three complete counterparts of its form, as remembered in life, is indeed a wonder. Yet a Liverpool man lately beheld three such distinct ghosts of his disabled uncle, hobbling one behind the other. He mentioned the experience to a brother and sister accompanying him. When they arrived home, they learned that the same uncle had died at the time of the phantom's appearance. Another specter, haunting an American lady and her daughter, annoys them by rattling their toiletries and pulling at their dresses. Another wakes up its sleeping victims by placing its icy cold hand upon their faces. The ghost of one man's sister-in-law pushes him around, lifts his legs, shakes his door, and blows cold air at him. The phantom of a friend visiting a young lady the day of his death appeared to her first as a hand waving backwards and forward. Later, while she was taking down her hair, it appeared to help her. After she went to bed, it lay down beside her, kissed her, and said, "Goodbye." I really enjoyed this article, not only for the historical perspective about ghosts and the paranormal, but also how similar those experiences are to reports we receive today. What really stands out to me, and we often don't think about, is just how many different kinds of hauntings there are, how many different types of paranormal experiences. I also think this is very exciting, because we are still, it feels, very much in the early days of trying to figure out what paranormal activity, what ghosts, and what those things that go bump in the night are really all about. If these questions really interest you, I would really like to encourage you to join us and try the haunting at home. Getting to try spooky paranormal experiments in the dark around Halloween is not only fun, but it might change your perceptions of how you view the paranormal in your day-to-day life. If you don't have any plans on Halloween Day, I hope you can join us for our virtual haunted campfires, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time, for our terrible tales for creepy kids, and then late night at 11:30 p.m. for our midnight ghost stories. Information about both of those experiences can be found on our website, which is hauntedwalk.com. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all three at Haunted Walk. And if you're not already, be sure to subscribe to the show and leave us a rating wherever you listen to us. As always, a special thanks to our Haunted Talks team, including our awesome audio editor, Michelle Dennis, and Kevin MacLeod at incompetech.filmmusic.io for the additional music. Until we meet again, sweet dreams and happy Halloween.
Halloween, everybody make a scene.